To quote the legendary Vince Lombardi, what the hell is going on out there? Sal Paolantonio on what the Eagles must do to right a seriously listing ship. Sean Green will join us to talk to you about treading carefully in Week 18. Gary Myers on coaching hot seats in the Hall of Fame 15. And Pat Leonard joins us to talk about the NFC East. That's all right now on This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football. A deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
All right, thanks for joining me here on Week 18 edition. This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan joining you. I'll be joined by Sal Paolantonio in just a couple of minutes. Sean Green at the bottom of the hour to talk about a very, very trepidatious Week 18. Wait till you hear some of the quarterbacks that are starting this week. Gary Myers will join me in a little while. We're going to just talk about the Hall of Fame and about some coaching hot seats. And then Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News will talk about the NFC East and where each team's looking going into Week 18 and the offseason. All right, listen, we're not going to dissect this Cardinals game much. That has been thoroughly done. Just suffice it to say, Kyler Murray, 25 of 31 for 232 yards and 3 touchdowns, a 117 quarterback rating. Arizona rushed 40 times for 221 yards, while the Eagles only rushed 23 times for 91 yards. Arizona, time of possession, 39 minutes to the Eagles' 20. That's a disaster. That is a disaster. And the Cardinals scored touchdowns on all 4 second-half drives after trailing 21-6 at halftime. Okay, I have been talking about for a couple of weeks now about the Eagles needing a blowout, and I kept saying one was coming. With the soft end of their schedule with the Giants at home and then Arizona at home. Well, they got by the Giants and were punched by Arizona, so the blowout's not coming. What has to happen now is the Eagles have to use Week 18 and the number of days thereafter to figure out what the hell they have to do to get this ship righted in time for what is very likely to be an extended road trip through the NFL playoffs. It's not going to get any easier. Why don't we bring Xander? Let's bring on this gentleman here, the host of the NFL Matchup Show, Sal Paolantonio. Sal, thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, Pat, it's great to be here. I mean, we got the last week of the season, Pat. We got 5 playoff spots on the line. 4 division titles, Pat, are on the line on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. You can't really get much better for the last week of the season. But I want to dovetail off of what you just said with the Arizona Cardinals. Right. They came into your building and they didn't punt. Pat.
Yeah.
That's an embarrassment. But I have and it goes back to, what they're doing defensively. I sent you these notes from our film study and from our ESPN stats and information. The film study and the numbers show that the Eagles play the worst man coverage in the NFL. Opposing quarterbacks have a 79 QBR. When the Eagles play man coverage, that's nearly perfect, with 26 touchdown passes and only 5 interceptions. So the Eagles need to get off their man coverage. They don't have the personnel to execute it. And they need to get off of it starting this week against Tyrod Taylor and the New York Giants. And so that's a big, big issue. And it goes back to this. 9 Eagles combined to rush the passer 62 times off the edge against the Cardinals. They had 1 pressure.
Yeah. And one sack.
One pressure and 62 chances.
Yeah.
Man, that's bad on defense. And offensively, you have 4 Pro Bowlers: Swift, Brown, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce. You need to run your offense through your 2 offensive Pro Bowlers, Swift and Brown. Mm-hmm. The Eagles ran 26 plays after halftime. Only one of them was an A.J. Brown target. 1 target, 1 catch in halftime after the half. And it was an 18-yard gain. It was their longest play of the half. So going forward, you need to play less man-to-man, one. And on offense, you need your offense to run through your Pro Bowlers, Brown and Swift. Now, I don't know how much the Eagles are going to play their stars in this game. It's a big question mark.
Right.
Big.
Yeah. You mentioned there's a lot of weather possibilities, too, on Sunday up in the Meadowlands, which also may factor in to how much the Eagles play their stars. But let me start with a comment you made about the defense, Sal. You're into week 18 now. Can a team, because you've stood in hundreds of locker rooms and hundreds of sidelines, can a team going into week 18 make a systemic change like that to their defense and say, we're going to stop, or we're going to cut way back on man-to-man, and we're going to go zone? Is that even feasible to do?
I believe so. Matt Patricia is a super smart guy. He's got a lot of experience. He's got to mix and match his personnel a little bit better. Maybe play some matchup zone defense. That will help a little bit for sure. And they've got to be a little bit more creative with their stunts and games on the defensive line so they get after the quarterback.
Right.
And it goes back to also their defensive tackle play. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, you're going to be blown away by these numbers. Jalen Carter is 22 years old. He has 528 defensive snaps. Jordan Davis is 23 years old. He has 502 defensive snaps. Fletcher Cox is 33 years old. He has 684 defensive snaps. He stays on the field and is more effective than these two young players from Georgia. I don't know what's going on, but that's just insane.
That is insane. And all right, well, let's broaden the discussion then about it. Just give me your take now as a veteran football watcher and a veteran watcher of the Philadelphia Eagles. Is a team, Sal goes 10-1. And we talked all season long, you and I, about how, all right, look, they're winning the games. The teams that are put in front of them, they're winning the games. Yeah, they're not blowing everybody out, but they're 10-1. I mean, you are what your record says you are. Now they go 1-4 in their last 5. What is it that you think has happened here? If there was a broad answer as to what has turned this season around so badly, what would you say, or could you put your finger on?
Pat, I think, first of all, they had a lot of injuries in their secondary that they had to deal with. Second of all, they lost confidence in their defensive coordinator. They couldn't get any kind of pass rush on third down, and their man-to-man coverage wasn't working. So when you're giving up in a passing league, when you're giving up big plays to Tyrod Taylor and to Kyler Murray, that's one thing. That's different from Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy and the Niners and the Cowboys.
Right.
So they held their own against Kansas City. They did get lucky with some drops for sure. They held their own with Buffalo. But if Gabe Davis zigs to the right in the end zone and Josh Allen throws it to him, there is no overtime, there is no Eagles possession, and the game's over.
Right. Right.
So they were the beneficiaries of some poor play by Kansas City and Buffalo.
Right.
I get that, but they have good, solid, experienced personnel. They have a smart defensive assistant who's calling plays in Matt Patricia, who's done it at the highest level. Remember, he's the one who designed Malcolm Butler's undercut of that play in the Super Bowl that picked off Russell Wilson at the goal line and gave Tom Brady another ring.
Right.
That was Matt Patricia who designed that defense that picked off Russell Wilson at the goal line. And Malcolm Butler, Brady was the MVP, by the way, in that game. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
And so after the game, Brady gives him the truck. And Malcolm Butler at this point is feeling like, hey, not for nothing, but I don't want a red truck. I want a black truck.
No, my
God.
God.
This is a true story. I wrote it about in my book because I covered that game.
Right.
So he made Brady turn the red truck in and get a black truck. And Brady said, okay, no problem. You just won the Super Bowl with an interception at the goal line. So it was Patricia who designed that defense. And so he's a smart guy. Was Sirianni right to demote Sean Desai? I don't know, but he needed to do something to shake something up, and it obviously hasn't worked. And he's
All right.
this week he said we got to get back together, we got to stick together. Let's see what happens.
All right. Now, let's talk about the coaching side of it then. Now, you were kind enough to send me the transcripts of the recent press conferences, both Brian Johnson and Matt Patricia, and I made reference to you. It's just that I saw just a ton of read speak in there. It's on me. I got to do better, et cetera, including Nick Sirianni. Do you think the Eagles have the coaching savvy now to make whatever pivot they have to make to get this ship right in time for wild card round?
I do believe that. If you want to flip to the offensive side of the ball, Brian Johnson needs to hold Jalen Hurts a little bit more accountable in terms of changing the play at the line of scrimmage and improvising, and also going through his progressions in a way that allows them to complete passes. But as I said before, you need to get A.J. Brown, move him around.
Right.
Keep the defense guessing. Run shallow crossers that he's so good at. He's so big. He's so strong. He's fast. His hands are strong. He beats one-on-one coverage easily. He catches the ball in traffic. Get him to the point where you get the ball in his hands and you get those yards after the catch. And then the quick hitters to DeAndre Swift. You got 2 Pro Bowlers blocking for him. Mailata could have gone to the Pro Bowl. And you got DeAndre Swift, who's one of the top 5 backs in the league. I mean, it should run through your 2 Pro Bowlers.
Right.
But I don't know how much we're going to see in this game. In the weather, that's supposed to be bad, like real bad. Rain, sleet, snow, freezing rain in North Jersey, Sunday, all day Sunday. And with that turf, it's very problematic. So there'll be scoreboard watching. If the Cowboys are dump trucking Washington, right, then they got to make a business decision about what they do in terms of, okay, we want to get right in this game, but we don't want to be wrong in terms of how we deploy our personnel.
All right. This question tangentially does apply to the Eagles, Sal. I saw a piece in The Athletic about teams that get hot in December, and does that translate into a meaningful run in the postseason? Statistically speaking, the answer was no, that there was very little deviation as to if a team was, say, 4-0 in December or 3-1 in December, went on a big run, did they go deep into the playoffs? Do you think with Philadelphia, to use the phrase, staggering into the playoffs, does that have an impact once the ball is kicked off in the first wild card game?
I don't think so, Pat. I've seen hot teams falter. I've seen teams that rest players, die on the vine, like the Ravens in 2019. They were 14-2. That was one of the best examples. Right. Lamar Jackson had an MVP season, and they scored 12 points against the Titans and lost at home.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of different things. To me, I've always found the Ron Jaworski postulate, if you will, that the game is about individual matchups and how you create mismatches through formation variation and coaching and through play design and play calling, whether you have the right tools to do that against your opponent. Now, let's just say the Eagles wind up going on the road to Tampa.
Right.
They're the 5 seed. They're going to play the 4 seed.
Right.
I believe that will be a Monday night game. I think you look at it as a possible Monday night game. The last time it was a Monday night game, when in the NFC, when the 4 played the 5.
Right.
So I think that could happen.
Okay.
That gives you an extra day.
Right.
And if I'm Nick Sirianni, I go to Tampa early. And I let the guys put their feet up and enjoy the warm weather.
Yeah.
I find a place to practice. I let them get their mind right. Gives you an extra day with Devontae Smith's ankle. Right. And lets you go, there's nothing like building the bond of brotherhood like a road trip.
Right.
Get out of the cacophony of Philadelphia and all of the, noise and
plenty of that.
There's plenty of it. So just I personally think it's a good Jeffrey Lurie and Don Smolenski, the team president, are going to hate me for saying this because you make a lot of money in the playoffs if you're the home team, especially in a wild card round, where you still have control of everything and the league doesn't really take over. I think it's better for the team to go on the road week one. I really do.
Yeah.
If there are signs of improvement this week, that will be a good thing. And then you just rest and you reconnect and you reconfigure to play the Bucs on the road if the Bucs beat the Panthers, which we think they're going to do.
Correct. All right, Sal Pal, the host of the NFL Matchup Show. I got a few minutes left with you here. Let's look around the league now. You mentioned coming on that the Bears-Packers game has all the elements of a snow globe game with some weather expected in Green Bay. Packers win, they are in. And could end up the 6th seed if the Rams decide to throw the towel in at San Francisco at the same time. Both games are late games. Tell me, do you think Green Bay holds serve at home against a suddenly surging Chicago Bear team?
Well, Jordan Love is playing at a very high level. Justin Fields is trying to make the case for him to stay in Chicago. I think this game is a toss-up. The great equalizer will be the snow.
Right.
The storm that's coming through the East Coast up the F995 corridor is nothing compared to the storm that's going through Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. That's a bad, bad snowstorm.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that's a big game. Obviously, the Packers have fought their way back in. They've had a classic up and down season. Green Bay. They got hot, then they staggered, a couple of bad losses, and now they've caught fire again. If the Packers win, if the Packers stumble against the Bears and Seattle beats Arizona, which is no given either, given what we just saw, Seattle would in fact take that number 7 seed. Okay, Sal, in the AFC, the big game is the Sunday nighter. Buffalo, as you and I talked about, and we both said it was going to happen, fought their way back now and have rattled off 3 straight wins and are, I think it's 3, it might be 4, and have fought their way now back into a chance now to get the 2 seed if they beat Miami Sunday night. How do you see this game?
Well, Josh Allen has thrown multiple pass touchdowns against the Dolphins in all 12 games he's faced Miami, including the playoffs. That, Pat Callahan, is the longest streak by any quarterback against any single opponent in NFL history, going back to 1920. Okay, right. Pat?
Okay.
So that'll get your attention right there. Allen has thrown – he's threw 4 touchdown passes and 1 rushing touchdown in their Week 4 demolition in Buffalo, and he finished with a perfect passer rating. So Josh Allen has got their number. There's no question about that.
Right.
The loss of Bradley Chubb is huge. Why Mike McDaniel had him in the game in garbage time when he was getting boat raced by Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I was there. I called that game on radio with Steve Levy. We couldn't believe that Bradley Chubb was still in the game.
Yeah.
He was. He had a non-contact knee injury. Yeah. That's a severe setback for a team that came into that game last week, 2nd in the league in sacks and number 1 in the league in quarterback hits, the Dolphins on defense. But the Dolphins couldn't stop the Ravens at all. And I think that they'll have a hard time stopping Buffalo in this game. I really do.
I do too, Sal. I think Miami, unfortunately, their schedule has just shown. The previous game, as you mentioned, against Buffalo, 48-20, the shellacking they took by the Ravens, and they lost to Kansas City over in Europe. They have not shown, other than squeaking by Dallas, they've not shown against top-tier talent.
No, they came into Philadelphia and got embarrassed as well. The game I'm actually really focused on is Dallas.
Right.
Dallas at Washington. Dallas scores 15 points per game less on the road than they do at home. That's the largest point differential in that category in the NFL.
Yeah.
So you talk about holding serve. All right. Well, it's on their racket to go to Washington, where they've had trouble winning over the years, and win the game. They don't have to be convincing. They just need to win on the road, Pat.
Yeah.
And listen, this is a game where I anticipate they will just try to put it in the defense's hands, and they'll be very conservative offensively. Will it be enough? And Ron Rivera would like nothing better, former Eagle, former Bear, tend to upset Dallas on the final game of his career in Washington.
And I think it's a classic game, Sal, where if the Cowboys don't they don't send a message to the Commanders early, that's not your day, and to get the golf clubs in the trunk.
Yes.
Then they could find themselves with a real problem there. So
my only worry, Pat, is Dallas loses and the Eagles lose too.
Oh my gosh. Oh God. That would probably put a nice little cherry on top of this last run by the Eagles. But that would be devastating if that happened. Both games at the same time, late Sunday.
Yeah, so it's all how, and I'm not saying that the Eagles are inferior to the Giants. It's how Nick Sirianni wants to play the game in that weather on that field.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me is how is Nick Sirianni going to manage this game? That's the key thing.
All right, Sal, I know you got to run. The matchup show, I'm sure this weekend, you probably got a lot lined up, week 18, right?
Yeah, we got a big show. Listen, I don't want to take time away from my friends Gary Myers and Pat Leonard on This Week in Pro Football. So I'm going to say ciao, and we will see you next week, Pat Callahan.
All right, Sal. Thanks very much, pal. Appreciate it. Sal Paolantonio joining me here on This Week in Pro Football. Sal's got some hits he's got to do. So he joined me a little bit early this week, and thank you very much for that. Make sure you check out the matchup show on Saturday and Sunday on the ESPN networks. All right, listen, we get back here. We're going to take a couple of minutes. Let's take a look at that Week 18 schedule. Remember, both Saturday and Sunday games this week. So we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the playoff standings and who is in right now and who is on the bubble. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Celebrate your victories in style at Spring Mill Country Club. From Eagles wins to baby showers, weddings to birthdays, our picturesque venue is ready to host your special events. Make memories that last a lifetime in our stunning surroundings. Call Spring Mill today at 215-675-6000 and elevate your next event to unforgettable heights. Contact us now to book 215-675-6000.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Back to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining me here on JAKIB Sports. You follow, please, on X at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the station, the network, at JAKIB Sports throughout this playoff run, both the Philadelphia Eagles run and throughout the NFL postseason. So look forward to corresponding with you on that. Don't forget, we got Sean Green coming up in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about that Week 18 slate and some just unbelievable quarterback play that you're going to be staring at there. So please be careful. As Kurt Warner says, stay within your means. I love that. And then we'll have Gary Myers. I want to talk with Gary about the Hall of Fame Final 15 and about some coaching hot seats. And then we'll have Pat Leonard on to wrap up the show. We're going to be talking about the NFC East, including those two games, Philadelphia at New York and Dallas at Washington. Xander, why don't you bring up that Week 18 schedule, if you would, here. Let's look at this. Well, this is the playoff picture. That's fine. We'll look at this. Okay, fine. We'll go with this schedule here. Saturday, you've got the Steelers at the Ravens. The Steelers with a chance to make the playoffs. They've had a nice run. They discovered their running game finally. Steelers have to win, and Jacksonville has to lose. Jacksonville is at Tennessee. Not much chance Jacksonville's going to lose that game, but hey, anything could happen. Mike Tomlin, again, a winning record. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. Unbelievable. But Steelers have a good chance in that game. The Ravens will be resting virtually everybody. Saturday night, you got the AFC South play-in game, Houston at Indianapolis. If Jacksonville wins, Jacksonville is the AFC South champion. The winner of that game would be a wild card, probably a 7 seed in the AFC. And come on, I've talked about this all season. I don't think the Jags are going anywhere, and certainly these two teams aren't going anywhere deep either, but chance to make the playoffs. On Sunday, you got really, you have 10 games Sunday that have playoff implications. So lots of games. One of them's not the Jets and the Patriots. I can guarantee you that. Atlanta, New Orleans, a very slight chance one of those teams to make it. Tampa Bay would have to stumble at Carolina. I cannot believe that is going to happen. I think Tampa definitely holds serve there. The Lions are locked into the number 3 seed, but the Lions, they'll have some incentive to play in that. I mean, there's a chance. There's always a chance that both Dallas and Philadelphia stumble. Lions will at least, I think, put forth a half of an effort in that game against Minnesota just to keep everybody sharp. Cleveland is locked into the 5 seed. There'll be nothing happening there. Sal talked about the Bears and the Packers. That's a big game Sunday. Big game. Bears are playing much better, 7-9, chance to ruin Green Bay's offseason. Seattle, as I mentioned, a slight chance. Seattle, to get in, they have to watch Green Bay lose to Chicago. And Seattle has to beat Arizona. The Cardinals, I'll tell you, I give the Cardinals a ton of credit for last week. 3-12 team traveling 3,000 miles to Philadelphia to play a very good team, and they just stood there and went toe-to-toe. Kudos to them. It's not a gimme for Seattle, I don't think. Denver and the Raiders, nothing. Rams and the 49ers. 49ers are locked in at 1. The Rams are not locked in at the 6th seed. If Green Bay wins and the Rams lose, the Rams drop to the 7th seed. Rams had to think about that. Do they want to play their starters and try and lock up that 6th seed and go to Detroit, as opposed to falling to the 7 and probably going to Dallas, which we all know how good they are at home. Rams have opted to rest their starters. Stafford, Kupp, Aaron Donald will not play. So the Rams, I guess, they're going to take being healthy over the better seed. And then the Sunday night game we talked about at Buffalo at Miami. Sal and I both think the Bills are going to defeat the Dolphins and lock up that 2 seed. Buffalo will be a challenge to the Ravens if they meet in the AFC title game, or even before that, if Miami happens to hold serve. Okay, a quick look at playoff seeding. Xander, thank you very much. You see there, the 49ers and the Ravens have locked up their respective number 1 seeds. Not much in the AFC as far as those teams that are in the hunt. In the NFC, Atlanta has a minuscule chance, as does the Saints. As I said, Tampa has to stumble there. Minnesota, an absolutely infinitesimal chance of making it. Seattle is the one with a chance to sneak in there as a 7 seed. But it's going to be an interesting week 18. A lot of weather and just some brutal quarterbacks. But I the way I see it, ladies and gentlemen, I see in the NFC, I see it just as really as it is right there, except I think Green Bay wins. I think Green Bay will be the 6th seed. The Rams will be the 7th seed. Rams will go to what I think will be Dallas. Dallas has to put Washington away early. They really do. I think that could be, you don't want it. You just don't want it. You don't want that situation where a team like Arizona last week all of a sudden says, hey, we're in this game. Why don't we play? But I think it'll be Dallas to 2. And it'll be the Packers will end up being the 6th seed. The Rams will fall to the 7. Detroit, of course, is the 3. So Detroit would get Green Bay, and the Rams would go to Dallas. In the AFC, as I said, I think Buffalo ends up the 2 seed. Miami then would fall to the 6th seed. And then you'd have Cleveland against the AFC South winner. I think that's going to be Jacksonville. So some good first-round playoff matchups are coming. All right, listen, we get back here. Sean Green is going to join me. We're going to talk about treading carefully in Week 18 and take a look. I want to ask Sean about weather and how that might impact his look at that Eagles-Giants game, and about some really just bizarro quarterback matchups throughout the league. We're going to do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Anything can happen when you go live. Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, voted best casino in Pennsylvania.
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. But that's not all. They are excited to join forces with another pillar of the community banking world in eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank. Their team of professionals will fit seamlessly into First Bank's culture of dedication and understanding your financial aspirations to fuel your success. With a deep-rooted commitment to eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank stands as a testament to community values and unwavering support. Experience the difference of real relationships and dedicated personal bankers. Connect with any member of the team today at our Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or you can call them directly at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC. At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
All right, welcome back here This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Pat Callahan joining you. Let's bring this gentleman on, the proprietor of the Sports Gambling Podcast. That would be the excellent Sean Green. Sean, how are you, pal?
What's happening, Pat? How are we doing?
All right, we're fine. I know you're probably excited. You probably got that thick bankroll of yours, and you're excited about plopping down some serious coin. In the AFC, Sean, 4 of the 16 teams will start a quarterback Sunday who was really a week 1 starter. The other 12, how about Bailey Zappi, Trevor Siemian, Mason Rudolph, P.J. Walker, Jake Browning, Will Levis, Blaine Gabbert, Jarrett Stidham, Aiden O'Connell, Easton Stick. How do you navigate such a field in terms of saying, okay, I'm going to try and make some money here on the week 18?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to pick your spots, right? I honestly, I like to find spots where one team needs it, needs the win to get in, and then the other team is playing spoiler, especially if it's in division, because I think that's where you get an inflated line and you get some good motivation spots. I mean, a great example is last year where the Lions were quote unquote playing a meaningless game against the Packers. Packers needed that game to get into the playoffs, and Lions got that win and then rode that momentum into this season. So I think there are spots where teams that quote unquote have nothing to play for actually end up having a lot to play for. Teams that have been hot as of late, you look at like the Bears, who are probably trying to build some momentum rolling into next season, playing against a Packers team. It's a revenge spot. So there, you kind of got to pick your spots. And it's not the easiest week to bet.
All right. Well, aside from the Bears, we're going to get to that game because that's a key game this week. The Washington Commanders are a poster child for what you just described.
Oh, yes.
And that is a big number that has been posted there, around 13.5. I see you're leaning Washington there. Is that why? Do you think that there's some sort of motivation the Commanders might come up with there? And they're playing a Dallas team's not the same team on the road.
No, not the same team on the road. Might get some weather, which anytime you introduce something like weather into a game, things can get a little wonky. And you saw in this very similar scenario last year where the Cowboys needed to beat a Commanders team that had nothing to play for, and they couldn't get it done. Commanders randomly popped their head up against the Cowboys. This has turned into their biggest game of the season, right? Because it's their hated rival. They're at home. They were embarrassed on national television on Thanksgiving Day. They got nothing to lose. And also, like, these guys are, this isn't like NBA, all-star game where it's like, oh, hey, we're not going to foul it. These guys are playing literally for their lives and for their careers. So the guys that are out there are going to be playing hard. I certainly would like this better if they could somehow figure out a way to get Jacoby Brissett out there. But still, I think this is a ton of points to make a division dog, even in Week 18.
The Commanders, too, if you think about it, they're all auditioning. They're auditioning for new head coach. So, you're right. I don't think anybody's going to want to dog it out there on this game tape for whoever takes over for Ron Rivera, who I guess whatever extortion plot he was holding over the Washington Commanders ownership has finally been stopped.
They were never going to stick it out with Ron Rivera. You're bringing in a new owner. Why not start with a new coach? I don't know. Like, what purpose did this extra year with Ron Rivera serve them? I really don't understand.
Not much, Sean. I'll tell you that.
They were never going to bring him. He was hired by Dan Snyder. They were never going to stick with him. I mean, he had no shot. Start fresh. I never got that move.
26-40 in 4 years. And I think he's just a desultory, lackluster coach at best who rode Cam Newton's 1 year to a Super Bowl.
Kind of like Jeff Fisher, right? Got to one Super Bowl and then just hung around the league for forever, right? Because he's
a damning comparison you just made there. Jeez.
Come on. You hang around for the league, don't do much. You have a couple good years.
I tell you, it's a long time Ram fan. It's funny that on July 9th, 7-9, you should see Ram Twitter goes crazy. Happy Jeff Fisher Day because it's 7-9.
Oh yeah, Rivera would be lucky to get to 7-9.
I know it could be April 12th. Could be Happy Ron Rivera Day. All right, listen. Let's look at the local team here for a minute, Sean. You've been watching them very closely, I know, all season long.
Yes, complete disaster.
Yes, just tell me. I mean, you and I asked you during the week what the money line was on the Eagles last week. You told me 600. So obviously everybody was fooled by what ultimately happened. What do you see from your perch out there? And what is the smart money saying about this Eagle team right now?
Yeah, I mean, it was an unmitigated disaster. It's weird. I actually thought the offense played fairly well. I mean, they scored on 4 out of their 6 drives. So, yeah, did I like the play calling on that last drive where they, ran the back-to-back QB draws and the bubble screen to Kenny Gainwell? No one likes that play calling, but I still thought they moved the ball pretty well. I thought Hurts threw the ball pretty well, had 3 passing touchdowns, which should be enough to get it done. I don't think anyone saw this unmitigated disaster that was the defense. I mean, this is only the second time in Cardinals history where they didn't have to punt in an NFL game. Like, I knew our defense had issues, and especially when they got the pick 6, I thought, like, all right, good stop there. Now, I guess the good news is, I guess here's a couple of points for optimism. One, I did like A.J. Brown finally speaking to the media. In a weird way, I thought, like, okay, this locker room isn't quite as fractured as maybe people
you're
thought.
right about that. I think that was well received. I agree.
So, it's clear that the players and the coaches have each other's back, which is at least a starting point. Now, assuming they don't have a miracle with the Commanders winning and them beating the Giants, they'll probably have to play an NFC South team, which, as far as a round one playoff game, okay, you could do worse than that. And then you imagine they're probably going to either go into, San Francisco, Dallas, somewhere like that, where it's an automatic revenge spot. So if this team decides to get motivated, decides to play some defense, they have the talent, I think, to go on a little bit of a run. They're getting Avonte Maddox back. They're getting Darius Slay back. They're getting Zach Cunningham, the one linebacker that likes to tackle on the team, back. So they have the talent. Execution is obviously a huge question mark, though.
All right. I mean, that's good optimistic viewpoint there, which of course we don't have to go through the opposite side of it. Which is
the opposite side is pretty clear. Like, this team has quit. They got no heart defensively, and they're going to unravel. In some ways, it might be better for them to start out on the road, because I think there's a tension between them and the city right now that's certainly not going to help them. Going on the road against the NFC South team might be a cure for what ails them. So we'll see.
It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. And Sal Pao kind of said the same thing, that it could be a good time for a road
trip. We'll see.
You mentioned those three plays. I think the relationship between the players and the coaching staff, I think you're right. A.J. Brown went a long way towards saving that, but I'm not sure it could survive another set of play calls like that. You've got to demonstrate you have some confidence in your team, especially 1 week prior. They converted a 1st and 20. And the head coach has to have the savvy to say, you know what? Arizona's gotten the ball 3 times this half, and they have shoved it down our throats and scored 3 touchdowns.
Yes.
I better get a touchdown here. And
who thinks? Yeah.
Terrible play calls.
Who thinks a field goal is getting it done there? I don't get it. I mean, anything you should have gone for, obviously you wouldn't go for it on 4th and 20, but, be super aggressive. Get the ball to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's so good. I mean, I don't know what else you want to see out of A.J. Brown. If I was A.J. Brown, I'd be really mad. Throw me the ball. I'm much better than these other guys.
All right. So, Sean, let's take a look then at a couple of these games. We already talked about Dallas and Washington. You're going to lean Washington there.
Yeah.
Chicago at Green Bay. The Packers win, and they are in, Sean. But the Bears playing very well all of a sudden, 7-9. And you talk about motivation. The Bears are basically playing for Justin Fields, right? The Bears have the number 1 pick. Caleb Smith is expected to be that pick. The Bears have Justin Fields. Tell me how you think this game rolls out here.
Well, I mean, I'll switch it over to the defensive side. This Bears defense, since they traded for Montez Sweat, I think number 1 in defensive EPA. Like, they're rarely playing at a high level. And then I think the Bears match up pretty good against this Green Bay defense, which has certainly had a ton of issues. I mean, we saw, if you recall, Tommy DeVito, former made man from the Jersey area, he carved him up. He carved him up like his chicken cutlets. Because they really struggle with mobile quarterbacks. And I think Justin Fields is going to run the ball a bunch because his back's against the wall. And I think it's going to be a tough out for this Packers team.
So do I, Sean. I think so, too. I lean Bears here, too. And the last game I want to ask you about, Sean, is the Sunday Nighter, which is an all-in game for the number 2 seed in the AFC and the AFC East title. Buffalo coming in, a lot of momentum now, Sean.
Yeah.
Buffalo's won 6-6. They've righted that ship, 4 straight wins now, playing Miami. If Buffalo wins, they are the AFC East champion. Miami a little banged up here. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to take Miami here, but again, that's why they're a 3-point home dog. And, I think this is actually a decent spot for Miami. I know they're without Bradley Chubb. I know Tyreek Hill's house almost burned down. They're dealing with some stuff off the field, but we see this all the time. We call it the Close Your Eyes special in the Sports Game on the Podcast, where a team underperforms the spread by 21 points like they did last week, and then they're getting points the following week. Historically, I think this year it's like, 10-6, 9-7. So it's historically a pretty good spot. I think this is going to be a close game. So I'll take the 3 points here with Miami as a home dog. And Josh Allen, these big games often come down to turnovers, and Josh Allen, even though they've been playing well, still turning the ball over way too much. And the Bills special teams have been an issue. They let up a kick return for a touchdown to start off that Patriots game. So kind of the stuff along the margins there, I think, favor the Miami Dolphins. And I think they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit. Achan, get him going. So yeah, I'm taking the Dolphins here, home dog +3.
All right. That's excellent. I lean Buffalo, but
it's a tough game,
I wonder though. I tell you one team that'll be rooting for Buffalo, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. Because if Buffalo wins, it's very likely that if Miami wins, it's very likely Buffalo as the 6th seed goes to Kansas City. I don't think the Chiefs want that matchup at all.
No, there's a lot of other AFC teams they'd rather see.
That's correct. All right, Sean Green, where does everybody find you this weekend? And I hope you stick with me through the playoff run here.
Oh, yeah.
Where's everybody going to find Sean Green and his entourage this weekend?
Yeah, just check us out. Sports Gambling Podcast. Pop it into YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your shows. And yeah, we got a ton of stuff coming up for the playoffs, a ton of props, picks, getting you ready for NFL Week 18, closing it out strong. And yeah, looking like the Eagles. Just can't wait for the playoffs to start. Want to get the end of this regular season over. So chopping us a bit here.
It's this Week 18, Sean. I just a terrible decision by the NFL. Just terrible. I have to ask Gary Myers this to me. Just all it was money. Just give me another slice of that pie. And, or no one, but I just think a terrible thing. But okay, enough about that proselytizing. Sean Green, thanks very much.
All right, take it easy, Pat. Good seeing you.
Week. All right. Sean Green, presented by Live Hotel and Casino here in Philadelphia. When we get back, Gary Myers is going to join me. We're going to talk about that Dallas-Detroit finish. We're going to talk about some coaching hot seats and the Hall of Fame 15. That's all next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Anything can happen when you go live.
I got everything you need. No trouble, don't need a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene. Don't need a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene.
Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, voted best casino in Pennsylvania.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
Johnny Apple's Restaurant and Bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's Restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Back here this week in pro football here on JAKIB Sports. Callahan joining you, and I'm joined right now by a prolific NFL author, the author of Once a Giant, which I'm reading right now, a very enjoyable book and a very poignant book, and that's Gary Myers. Gary, how are you?
It's about time you're reading it. That's all I got to say.
Well, I did go through the book before, but I'm sitting down now and I'm reading it. And, it's a great read. It is a great read.
Thank you,
Gary. And I would urge it for everybody. You don't have to be a Giants fan or a relative of Joe Morris to read this book. I'd urge any NFL fan, especially an NFC East fan, to check this book out. It's a great book by Gary Myers. All right, Gary, let's talk about three things here. Okay. And thank you very much for joining me. The first is just give me your take on that Saturday night game, Dallas and Detroit, and the bizarre finish which happened there, in which Brad Allen's crew was really vilified throughout the media.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe there was some other culpability there in how that played out on that 2-point conversion?
Well, it appeared to me, Pat, that Dan Campbell was trying to get a little too cute by having both of the offensive tackles walk over to Brad Allen to try to deceive the Cowboys into who was going to be eligible. Right. Now I wasn't at the game, and I assume you weren't there either, but there's supposed to be an announcement made on the PA system on who's reported eligible. Right. The fact that I don't recall the game announcers mentioning that, that, okay, Decker reported eligible. I don't know that he ever announced it. So that was kind of a mess up too. But I think that the fact that two guys walked over, and I forget his number 70 was the one who had been reporting the entire game, right, that Allen got maybe a little confused in the, the chaotic nature of that situation. But, the other thing I want to say about this is Dan Campbell, to me, was reckless after that penalty. Right. Who goes for a 2-point conversion from the 7-yard line when you're on the verge of overtime with potentially the number 1 seed in the conference being at stake? You're going to put your whole season on a 2-point conversion from the 7. It's one thing if the penalty was on the Cowboys to get him a yard closer, you're doing it from the 1. But I've never seen anybody get pushed back 5 yards and still doing it. And I mean, they had 3 shots at it. I know they kind of got screwed there on the first one, but they had 2 more shots at it, and they should have kicked to send it into overtime, played good defense if they lost the toss, and they could have won on a field goal. So,
yeah, I agree with you, Gary. Hardly. I think you're right, and I think it speaks. I'd be a little uneasy if I'm a Lions fan about what has Dan Campbell learned in 3 years in this league. It seemed to me like his temper got the better of him, and he said, damn it, we're going to stick with this 2-point conversion. And if you think about it, Gary, the play that they ended up running on the last attempt, I mean, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you got 2 excellent running backs, you got a very good tight end in Sam Laporta. No, let's find some big third-string tight end, and we're going to throw the ball to him at the 2-yard
line. The goal line, right?
And not even in the end zone. So I think the Lions they got to eat their own slice of humble pie there. And I think the league tendency right now is just to crush the officials in any circumstance. But I think in this case, I'm not sure it's justified.
Here's the funny thing. I was talking to somebody the other day. I didn't realize that Dan Campbell was that much of a Wild West guy going for all these 4th downs. That's what got Brandon Staley in trouble. Yeah. Now, the difference is that Campbell's been doing it, and it's paid off a lot of the time because his team is better. Right. But I can't guarantee this, but I would not be shocked in the playoffs. He's going to make one of these decisions that's going to backfire on him and cost him the season. Because what he did the other night by not kicking the extra, I was surprised he was going to 2 for 2 to begin with, right? And he actually told his team on the sidelines, score and we're going for 2.
Right.
I don't know.
No.
I grew up watching Bill Parcells coaching, and he had the best. You might not like him for reasons. He kept quitting jobs and this and that, but Pat, he was the best game manager I ever covered. He was better than Landry. He was as good, if not better, than Jimmy Johnson. I think he's better than Belichick. And these guys, Dan Campbell played for Parcells. He needs to go to a remedial class in game management, like about 25 other coaches do. They need to go to Parcells' house in Florida in the offseason and learn how to manage games.
How about talk about the opposing coach in that game? Dallas, a few minutes prior to all of that happening, the Cowboys are in position to kick a field goal to go up 7 points in the game, but they could run the clock down at the same time. But inexplicably, Dak Prescott hauls off and throws a ball 10 yards out of bounds outside the end zone, stops the clock, and ends up giving the Lions a full minute plus to go down the field. Mike McCarthy might be, Gary, the worst in the NFL at clock management.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to what I've been saying all year with you, Pat. If the Cowboys are one and done in the playoffs, now the chances of that happening now are less because it appears they'll win the division now. They're not going to lose to Washington on Sunday, and they'll have a home game when they're, been great at home.
Right.
But I'm not even sure winning one wild card game is going to do it for Jerry Jones, because the Cowboys will be home the second week as well. Right. And if they don't make it they haven't been to a championship game since 1995. And I really feel, now I haven't talked to Jerry about this, but how many times is he going to let Mike McCarthy underachieve? Jerry's past 80 years old now. God willing, he's going to live for another 30 years. Yeah. But who knows? This is his chance now. At least he's not stuck in the wild card round having to win 3 road playoff games. If McCarthy doesn't get him to the championship game, at least back against San Francisco, I mean, what's the point of keeping him? Yeah. I've been a proponent all year. My dark horse candidate for Bill Belichick all along has been Dallas. I think the most likely is probably the Chargers. But I'm telling you right now, I would not be shocked if the Cowboys make a quick exit, if McCarthy gets fired, and Jones makes a run at Belichick.
All right. Well, that's a great segue, Gary. By the way, Gary presented tonight by the good folks at Concrete Cutting Systems. Gary, the segue is now the coaching hot seats. Now, 3 of them have already happened.
Right.
But let me hit you with some others, and you just tell me. Now, you've mentioned Belichick now a number of times in this conversation. Mm-hmm. So he is gone, in your opinion, at the end of the season, either voluntarily or otherwise, from New England. Yes?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just reached a point where it's probably best for both parties. Now, I will say this. If Kraft indeed has not already made up his mind, and he says to Bill, okay, we're going to have the second or third pick, whatever it is, and be in position to take a quarterback, whether it's Williams or May or somebody else. What is your plan to fix the offense? We know the defense is playoff caliber, but the offense has been atrocious since Brady left. What are you going to do to fix it? Maybe Kraft will give him the benefit of the doubt and let him lay out a plan and then make a decision. Yeah. I think the decision's already made. Yeah. And quite frankly, I think it'd be better for Belichick to go someplace else where and get to a good team, the Chargers or the Cowboys, where he can pass Shula in 2 years, and just as important to him, win a Super Bowl without Tom Brady.
You think he's definitely going to stay in the league? You think Belichick is not going to hang it up in terms of
no? I definitely think he's going to coach next year, and I think he's going to have options. Now, the unknown is what kind of hardball is Belichick? I mean, I'm sorry, is Kraft going to play in terms of wanting compensation? And I mean, that could hold things up, because it held things up when Kraft traded Parcells to the Jets. It held things up when he traded for Belichick from the Jets.
Right.
But I think the precedent, Pat, one last thing is, I think the precedent has been set. Sean Payton cost the Broncos a first-round pick. Now, the Chargers pick is top 10.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly how high it can go. And you know they're not going to want to give that up. So it should be a pick down the road or something like that.
All right, let me hit you 3 other names. Just give me a quick up or down. Mike Vrabel of Tennessee, 6 years, 55-48 in 6 years. A winning record, but a team that has never grabbed the headlines or never made a deep enough run. Is Mike Vrabel there next year in Tennessee?
I think that he is, unless there's friction between him and Rand Carthon that I'm not aware of. But, Carthon comes in as a general manager and he inherits Vrabel, which is not the usual way that you do it.
Right.
I think Vrabel's a really good coach. He's yet to have an elite quarterback.
I agree.
Maybe the kid will turn out to be something special for him.
I don't know. It's Tennessee, man, between him and Jeff Fisher, just a plodding offensive team.
Yes, always.
Washington, Ron Rivera, 26-40 in 4 years. How in the hell Ron Rivera keeps doing it, I don't know. But is there any chance that he is the Washington Commanders coach next year? And if not, is anyone else going to take a hard look at him?
Well, first of all, Pat, I think you have a better coach of being the Commanders. a better chance of being the Commanders coach than Rivera. The writing's been on the wall since the day Josh Harris bought the team, that unless Rivera had an unexpected great run this year and got him deep into the playoffs, a new owner is going to want a new coach. He's going to want a new general manager. He's going to want to know everything. And it happened to the sale got approved too late for him to make any changes this year. Otherwise, he probably would have had a new coach this year if the sale had been complete last February.
Right.
How many winning seasons has Ron Rivera had in all these years he's been a head coach?
I'm telling you, Gary, not too. I told you. Well, I'm 26-40. That's just with Washington.
Yeah.
But Carolina, as I mentioned earlier in the show, he grabbed a hold of Cam Newton's jersey and rode him to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's right.
Not much at all. The last name I want to give you, Gary, Arthur Smith, 3 years in Atlanta. That's not a long time, I grant you, but 21-28, a team that's been consistently picking top 10, that has some prodigious offensive talent. Is Arthur Smith given another chance in the Deep South?
Well, assuming they lose this week, it'll be 7-10, 7-10, 7-10, 7-10. And it's it's consistent, right? It's very unusual a coach will have his first 3 seasons will be losing seasons, and he gets a fourth. And it doesn't seem like Arthur Blank has really endorsed him. He was supposed to be one of these offensive geniuses, although I never really saw it in Tennessee as the offensive coordinator. Just think about this. Kyle Pitts.
I was just going to say Kyle Pitts, right?
Drake London, Bijan Robinson.
Right.
3 top 10 picks, all, to improve the offense. Yep. And he couldn't turn Desmond Ridder into
a serviceable quarterback, right? I mean, that's all he had to do with that type of individual.
Yeah, talent. In that division.
Yeah, exactly.
How many games do you have to win? So
that's right. So, all right, Gary, the last thing I'm going to hit you with here, and I'm sorry I'm pressed for time here, but I want to take a few minutes. This is the Hall of Fame. You were a Hall of Fame voter. We're down to the 15. Just give me your overall take on this class. Would you rate this class as an extremely difficult one to winnow down? Are there any that you think are automatic that you could even speak of?
Well, I think you have to look at Antonio Gates and Julius Peppers as the 2 first-time eligibles that have a really good chance to get in. But overall, and this isn't looking to minimize the talents of these players because they're all great players, but this is not what I would consider to be our strongest 15. And I've been on the committee for about a dozen years now. There's a lot of players who have been around, the 3 receivers who've been knocking each other off, Andre Johnson, Torrey Holt, and Reggie Wayne.
Right.
I think there's a chance one will get in this year. Yeah. And I'm not even sure I'm going to vote for any of them. I don't necessarily look at any of those guys as a Hall of Famer, and that's probably why none of them have gotten in, because other people feel the same way. Yeah. But they've been knocking each other off and canceling each other out, and maybe there's momentum for one guy this year that breaks the logjam. I'm trying to think who else we have here. Jared Allen has been process.
One name I think deserves to get in, and obviously in the Philadelphia area, and that's Eric Allen. I think he has serious bona fides in terms of statistics.
And he's reaching the end of his eligibility as a modern candidate. So it's almost like now or never. Devin Hester is another guy I've supported. And Pat, I don't know how you feel about this. He was not much of a receiver, and he was a corner in college. He was the best at his position in NFL history. He was a game changer every time he had the ball in his hands. And if we're going to put kickers and punters in, we can put a guy in who was all that Bears 85 the 2006 Super Bowl team. The 85 Bears are always on my mind. He started off that game and gave me a chance to win by returning the open kickoff for a touchdown. I'm going to vote for Devin Hester as long as he's on the ballot. 2 years ago in his first year, he made the cut to 10, 15 to 10. Last year, he did not make the cut to 10. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to be with him this year. We are doing the meeting in person this year for the first time since 2019. So I'm looking forward to that, because I guess we did a good job on Zoom, But when you have 50 some odd people on Zoom, it becomes a
All right.
little unwieldy. So I think it's been much better in person.
Very good. Well, listen, I want to wish you the best of luck with that. I want to have you back on our Super Bowl show.
Yeah, definitely.
Because then I wonder if I could time it right, but we'll see if the announcement gets made prior to us coming on. I'd love to.
Well, you know what? It gets made on that Thursday night of Super Bowl week.
Okay.
And it'll probably get made after we're off the air. But maybe I can.
Maybe you can arrange. You could announce them right here on this show. That would be good, Gary. I'm sure you.
You know, I was going to say maybe because you're such a smart guy. Maybe I can give you the initials of the guys who get in, and you can figure out the rest.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine. Whatever signal you want to go before you go underground. Yes, you can. Book's called Once a Giant. It's a terrific book. I want everybody to get it. Gary Myers, thank you very much for joining me.
And we didn't even get a chance to talk about the Eagles going in the toilet.
No, I know that. We'll do that. We'll do that real soon. Hopefully they won't be there. Hopefully we'll talk some playoff football next week. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Take care, Pat.
Thank you very much. When we get back to wrap up the show here, Pat Leonard's going to join me from the New York Daily News. We're going to talk some serious NFC East. And we'll talk at Philadelphia and the Giants and Dallas at Washington. We'll do that to wrap it up here this week in pro football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spend. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
All right, back here this week in pro football. Let's drag this guy on here, New Jersey Devils season ticket holder, the host of the Talking Ball podcast, and he covers the Giants for the New York Daily News. That's Pat Leonard. Pat, how you doing?
Pat, I'm doing great, man. Another rough season up here in New York, New Jersey.
I tell you.
Same old.
Hey, you were kind enough to join me at week one when we previewed the Cowboys Giants Sunday nighter, and it was right down the chute from week one, Pat. When you look back on it, just give me your take, just a quick take on it. What was there any seminal event that killed the Giants season, or was it just a series of calamities?
Well, the play in that game, Pat, where they had a field goal blocked in return for a touchdown by the Cowboys, and Andrew Thomas chasing the guy running it back for a touchdown hurts his hamstring. And he plays through it a little bit in that game, ends up being out weeks and weeks. And that kind of started the snowball effect that you just said, right down the chute. I would say composition of their offensive line personnel. So that's the front office, that's Joe Kane. And then the offense and just their futility, inability to protect the quarterback and score points has been the thing. I mean, Pat, listen to this. They've given up 83 sacks this season. That is already second all time to only the 1986 Philadelphia Eagles, who had 104. So they are comfortably in second right now. And the Giants are averaging fewer than 15 points per game for the first time since 1979. So there's a lot of other things that have gone wrong, but it starts there.
Is Danny Dimes and Saquon Barkley in the starting backfield for the New York Giants in 2024?
No. That it's possible. They could franchise tag Saquon again. I got the feeling from listening to Saquon the other day at his locker that he would like to test the market. He talked about a possibility of a fresh start. He talked about how he does want to be a Giant for life. However, he wants a fair deal. And on breakup day, this coming Monday, he said he's going to talk to the Giants and say, shoot it to me straight. What's your plan? And they could franchise tag him and bring him back another year. But I think at this point, I think the Giants have already shown Saquon what they think of him with how the negotiations went last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone, although that would be unwise for them not to have traded him at the deadline if that was the plan. Daniel Jones is going to be on the team, in my opinion, because his cap number is $47 million. And so that's a really tough thing to get rid of unless, let's say, a team traded up for your draft pick and bought the Daniel Jones contract from you, right? Kind of like a salary dump like you'd see in Major League Baseball, let's say. But that's nothing I've heard about happening. And listen, Pat, like right now, Tyrod Taylor hits free agency. The only quarterbacks they have in the building would be Daniel Jones rehabbing, Tommy DeVito, and now Jacob Eason on the practice squad. So it all is pointing towards drafting a QB and Daniel Jones being here either to start early until the kid takes over or to be a backup.
It's really interesting, Pat, talking about these quarterback deals. Like, for instance, Denver now apparently has made the decision they're going to eat something on Russell Wilson. I don't know when, but it seems like before March they're going to do it. And I wonder now if teams are just going to be even more careful in doling out these mega contracts to these quarterbacks, because, boy, if it goes wrong, you are taking one hell of a cap hit.
Well, you make a great point. I mean, look at the Chicago Bears with Justin Fields and also the number one pick because of the Panthers giving them that pick in that trade. You think about, it's not just about Justin Fields versus the quarterback you're drafting. It's also about, if you're sticking with Justin Fields, it's about what contract are you giving him? Are you giving him a contract that supersedes Daniel Jones's 4-year, $160 million deal? And so, that's the thing. I think you hit the nail right on the head. Teams, including teams like the Bears, really right now, that has to be front of mind. Is this worth the investment? And that has to be a primary factor in your decision of whether to stick with the player.
You got it right, Pat, because what the Bears could do is say, hell with it. We'll draft Caleb Smith. We get him basically free for 4 years.
Right.
You don't have to face that music. So you're right. That could be a big factor.
Yeah.
In such a decision. So, it's going to be an interesting offseason in that regard. Okay. The Giants have been playing very hard. That was you can't find a more Giants way to lose than they did last week against the Rams, who did everything they could to give them the game. But the Giants, I'll tell you, they're playing hard. I give them a lot of credit, just as Arizona did last week when they came in here to Philadelphia. There's Sal Powell, my weatherman / senior correspondent, tells me that the weather could be terrible for that game Sunday. How do you see the Eagle-Giants game coming out?
Yeah, no, he's right. Sal's right. There is snow in the forecast up here, a lot of wind, as there always is in East Rutherford. And when you say the teams played hard, I think primarily you see it on the defensive end, right? They forced a lot of turnovers. They do have some really good talent on their defense, starting with Dexter Lawrence. Bobby Okereke was a good signing by Joe Shane. Xavier McKinney, the safeties, had a strong second half. They have struggled against the run, though. And I think that this game, I listened to Nick Sirianni the other day talk about how the Eagles really do need to get out of the rut they're in going into the playoffs.
Right.
And the Giants, they just can't match up right now with the Eagles on the lines. And I know the Eagles lines haven't been, especially their defensive line, hasn't been as dominant as they're used to it being.
Correct.
But when the Giants meet the Eagles, it's a really difficult matchup for them because every year it's the same conversation up here. It's, are they going to fix the offensive line? And somehow it's gotten worse under this regime, coming off Dave Gettleman, who couldn't fix it in 4 years either. And so that matchup, I think, really puts the Giants at a disadvantage. And then, like you saw, the Eagles in the late in the game when they played the Giants on Christmas Day, there was like a gotta have it drive the Eagles had. I think it might have been right after Tyrod threw the bomb touchdown to Slayton. But basically, it was a gotta have it, and they just ran the ball basically right down the Giants' throats and scored, got 6. And so I think the line is 5.5, for a reason. I think the Eagles are more talented, and they're a mess. I mean, they're an absolute mess. But I do think the Giants are gonna fall on this one again.
All right. I mean, the Eagles. Your standpoint, Pat. You cover the Giants. But you also cover the NFC East. The Talking Ball podcast. I urge everybody to check that out. What are your thoughts on this Eagle team? A team that goes 10-1 in its first 11 games. They weren't blowing the doors off anybody, but they were winning games. What else are you supposed to do? And then all of a sudden 1-4 in their last 5, and culminating in a shocking loss last week. What's your take on the Philadelphia Eagles and this kind of terrible turnaround?
Yeah. Well, I'll start. The one thing I've heard about offensively, and obviously the bigger problems on defense, but offensively, I know I've talked to people in the league who say that they feel like Steichen's absence is felt most in the passing game, in the sense that he made some of the different throws and the scheme and the fit and the comfortability for Jalen Hurts to deliver the ball downfield easier, whether it was the sight lines, whether it was the routes he was comfortable with, that the passing game looked and felt easier for Jalen Hurts when Shane Steichen was here. So that's something that different coaches in the league have told me they feel like they observe when they watch the film. Defensively, though, is obviously what stands out. I mean, watching the film back of the Cardinals game, I mean, I know this is repeating something that has been said a ton, but the linebacker play for the Eagles is shockingly bad. I mean, Shaq Leonard obviously has been a great player in this league, but he is not it. I mean, there were 2 or 3 plays in that game, Pat, that would have been 2-yard gains for James Conner if the linebacker in Leonard's spot had made the simple play of filling his gap and didn't. But Morrow's not good enough. I know Sidney Brown's a rookie. I don't see it in coverage. And Bradbury hasn't played well. Blankenship is a player who would be a good role player, but to me can't be like a standout guy on your team. So on and on.
I think Howie was lauded for the signings for the signing Leonard and for the trade for Kevin Byard. But the fact is, I think the two teams that let those guys go knew that the trade was largely off those tires.
And you can. Those are good additions if you have elite play around them sometimes, but you're asking Byard and Shaq Leonard to come in and solve your problems, which at their point in their career, clearly they're not prepared to do.
Excellent point. Talking here with Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talking Ball podcast. All right, Pat, let's go a little bit south here. The Dallas Cowboys traveling to Washington. The Cowboys handed an unbelievable gift last week. Well, 2 of them really. They got away with that win Saturday night.
That's right.
Despite Mike McCarthy's best efforts. And then the Cardinals shocked the Eagles on Sunday. The difference between a 2 and a 5 seed, boy, that's significant, right?
No doubt.
And so tell me your thoughts on this game. Actually, Sal and Gary Myers were talking about the fact that, this is a game where the Cowboys want to get rid of Washington early. So all of a sudden you don't get a tiger by the tail here. You think Washington with Ron Rivera, his car idling in the parking lot, has any chance maybe to take a run at Dallas here?
Early in the week, I thought, especially with like the 14.5 point line, felt high, especially with the Washington kind of gave the Niners a little bit of problems, even though the Niners did win comfortably, but it wasn't easy for them.
Right.
But I saw some reports coming out of Washington today, like JP Finley, a friend of ours down at, NBC, Washington. I saw him say that he felt like there might be some veterans that Washington doesn't play in this game. I don't know what the reason for that would be other than guys just being out. Right. But if that happens, that would kill the Eagles. And we'll obviously, see where that goes. Dallas, I do not trust, especially on the road. Like if they're at home in this game, I say, give me a 5-stack parlay on the Cowboys, right? Run it up. Right. On the road, and especially with weather, I don't think anything's a gimme. But with Washington looking like either some guys are going to sit, and obviously, like you said, knowing that Ron Rivera's got 1 foot out the door and somehow has lasted this long, I think Dallas takes care of business. The one thing I'm interested in, Pat, too, from a perspective of that game versus the Giants-Eagles is, like, it sounds to me like Sirianni intends to play his guys, but if it's 30-0 Dallas at halftime, does he start pulling guys, or is it really just that important for the Eagles to get right and get a good feeling that it really doesn't matter and he's just going to play them all the way through?
On that turf in New York, in the Meadowlands, in that kind of weather, he'd be crazy to, to try and establish some sort of rhythm, in anticipation next week. All right, Pat Leonard, does either the Cowboys or the Eagles, do you think, make any type of deep postseason run here?
I don't believe in the Eagles right now at all. It's not just that they're struggling and obviously that they can't stop anybody on defense, but there's just something off with the vibe and the team, the way they're talking. Some of the guys have still said some of the right things, but something feels off about, I don't know if it's the leadership or if it's, certain guys not getting along with certain coaches and it's just not all come out yet, but Something just doesn't feel right. I think they know it's not their year. Dallas, I think, has on a certain day, they can play with most teams in the league. So I do think they'll win their first game, though obviously we saw the Seahawks give them heck in Dallas. So that could end up being the matchup, and it's not necessarily a gimme. I see them winning one. If the Rams are still hanging around then in the second round, I think that's a tough matchup. I think Dallas, usually now, right, even when they're one of the more talented teams in the league, they end up kind of winning that first round game, looking like the all-stars, and everybody's like, oh, this is the year. And then they lay the egg the next week. I think that's most likely the case. And if they do end up facing the Niners, I know I've talked to a lot of people about this because there's times where the Cowboys really have looked like absolute studs at times this season. But again, just like the Giants can't match up with the Eagles up front, right. Dallas's lines really struggle with the Niners' lines on both sides of the ball for 4 quarters. It's just too tough for them.
I just don't see it. Cowboys, you're right. Cowboys could win 2 rounds, especially as the 2 seed. They get 2 home games. I do not, under any circumstances, think they could go out to San Francisco and beat the 49ers out there. I just don't believe it.
Right.
The last 2 times they went out there, they got boat raced into Alcatraz, and I don't see any chance that all of a sudden that's going to turn around. So
they can't. I mean, quite simply, they can't stop the run, and so that opens everything else. It's just the thing about Dallas is you talk to personnel guys in the league, like they are loaded talent wise, and that's obviously why pressure then comes more on McCarthy when things go wrong and he mismanages these games, is because people in the league, it's not just people on the outside seeing them underachieve. It's like people in the league look at their roster top down and they're like, how aren't you winning with this? Right. Yeah. But the Niners obviously are loaded too.
Well, the answer lies in, we were talking earlier on the show about Mike McCarthy having Dak Prescott haul off and throw a long bomb when he should be running the clock out with a 4 lead against Detroit. That might provide a clue as to the answer to your question.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, I still don't understand. And, who knows who was available and who wasn't exactly. But I think it seemed obvious to everybody, including me and you, that at the deadline, especially with McCarthy saying he was recommitting to the run, and they kind of were early on, they really needed another back, like a downhill back, and some commitment to that.
Leonard Fournette off Buffalo's practice squad. I don't understand that.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. Why wouldn't you do that? Dalvin Cook just signed with the Ravens.
Yeah, it doesn't add up. I don't follow it.
I don't know, but there you have it. Yeah. All right, Pat Leonard, listen, where does everybody find the Talking Ball podcast, and where can they find the excellent writings of Pat Leonard?
Yeah, so we're on the New York Daily News website, nydailynews.com. I'm on Twitter, PLeonardNYDN, and I'm on all the social channels, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. The handle is at PL, my initials, Pat Leonard, PL on NFL. Actually doing a YouTube Giants live Q&A tonight at 8:30 on the YouTube channel. So tune in. We'll talk some more Giants Eagles and give some insight there as well.
All right. All right. Listen, Pat, enjoyed it very much. Thanks a lot for joining me this season. And best of luck to Big Blue up there. Thank God we didn't even talk about the Jets. I couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it to you.
Yeah. Enough Aaron Rodgers. That's
right. Better days are ahead. Pat Leonard, thank you very much, pal.
Thank you, Pat.
All right. Pat Leonard joining me there at the New York Daily News and the Talking Ball podcast. That'll do it for this week in pro football, week number 18. Don't forget, you have 2 games tomorrow, play-in game tomorrow night. So there'll be some good television viewing, and then it all will get sorted out on Sunday. And then we'll be back next week focusing on where the Philadelphia Eagles are. They'll either be, who knows? They could be home as a number 2 seed playing a 7, or they could be headed to Tampa Bay, as Sal says, possibly for a Monday nighter. We'll sort it all out on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Thanks very much for watching, and good night.